The whole supermarket went quiet when the young woman reached into her small purse and pulled out her last $20. People had already started to whisper, "Why would she do that?" one woman murmured. "That man isn't even from here," another replied, shaking her head. The cashier paused, her hand hovering over the register, unsure whether to continue. The stranger standing in front of the line looked embarrassed. His basket was full, but his wallet was empty. His eyes moved from the floor to the woman, then back again, as if he could not decide whether to speak or disappear. And the woman? She stood there, calm but trembling inside, knowing very well that what she was about to do might leave her with nothing at all. 6 months later, that same man would return, and what he would do would leave everyone speechless. But on that day, none of them could see it coming. The story began long before that moment, in a small but busy town called Ijoko, not far from the heart of Lagos. Ijoko was the place where everyone knew everyone. The streets were always alive with the sounds of Okada engines, children laughing, and traders calling out prices from their stalls. It was a place full of life, but also full of struggle. In one of the narrow streets lived a young woman named Amara. Amara was known for two things: her quiet strength and her kind heart. She was not rich. In fact, many would say she was one of the poorest in her area. She worked at a small tailoring shop during the day and sold homemade snacks in the evening just to make ends meet. Some days she made enough to eat well. Other days she went to bed with only water in her stomach. Still, she never complained. Her neighbors often wondered how she managed to smile through it all. Amara, her friend Sade once said, "You need to start thinking about yourself more. This world is not soft. If you don't hold tight to what you have, it will slip away." Amara only smiled. "My mother used to say," she replied gently, "if your hand is always closed, how will blessings enter?" Sade sighed. She had heard that saying too many times, but life had taught her something different. Amara's mother had passed away years ago, leaving her with only memories and a few old proverbs. Those words became her guide. Even when things were hard, she held on to them like a map in a place where nothing made sense. One evening, after a long day of work, Amara counted the money she had earned. It was not much, just enough to buy some food for the next 2 days. She folded the money carefully and placed it in her purse. As she did, she whispered a small prayer, "Let this be enough." The next morning, the sky was bright, and the air carried the smell of fresh bread from nearby stalls. Amara decided to stop by a small supermarket on her way home from work. It was one of those newer stores, with bright lights and neat shelves, very different from the open markets she was used to. She walked through the aisles slowly, comparing prices, thinking carefully about every item she picked. Rice, cooking oil, a few vegetables. Nothing extra, nothing fancy. When she got to the cashier, she checked her purse again. The $20 she had was all she had left until the next week. As she stood there, waiting her turn, a man rushed into the store. He looked tired. His clothes were clean but wrinkled, like someone who had been traveling for a long time. There was something in his eyes that made people notice him, though no one could say exactly what it was. He moved quickly through the aisles, picking up items almost at random. Bread, milk, cereal, some canned food. He joined the line in front of Amara. At first, no one paid him much attention, but when it was his turn to pay, everything changed. The cashier scanned his items. She said, "That will be $48. The man nodded and reached into his pocket. Then he froze. He checked again and again. His face slowly lost color. I am sorry. I thought I had my wallet." The people behind him began to murmur. "You should check before you come out," someone said. "This is not a charity place," another added. The cashier looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I'll have to cancel the items if you can't pay." The man nodded slowly, clearly ashamed. "It's okay, I understand." He began to gather his things, placing them back on the counter, one by one. That was when Amara felt something stir inside her. She looked at her purse, then at the man, then back at her purse. Her heart began to beat faster. She knew what she had. She also knew what it meant to have nothing. The voices of the people around her grew louder. Let him go. He should learn his lesson. People like this always have stories. Amara swallowed hard. She could hear her Sadi's voice in her head. Think about yourself. But then another voice came, her mother's voice. If your hand is always closed, how will blessings enter? Before she could stop herself, Amara stepped forward. I will pay, she said. The entire supermarket went silent. The cashier blinked. Are you sure? Amara nodded till her hands were shaking. She opened her purse and pulled out the $20. It was not enough, not even close, but she placed it on the counter anyway. I have this, she said quietly. Please, let me help him. The stranger turned to her, his eyes shining with surprise. You don't have to do this, he said. Amara met his gaze. I know, she replied. And at that moment, with every eye in the store watching, she made a choice that would change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. But as she stood there, offering everything she had, something unexpected happened. The cashier leaned forward, lowering her voice. There's still more to pay, she said. Amara's heart sank, and the man reached into his empty pocket one last time. The stranger's fingers searched the inside of his pocket one more time. For a second, the whole supermarket seemed to hold its breath with him. Then his hand stopped. A small folded note slipped out and fell on the floor. He bent quickly and picked it up, opening it with trembling hands. His eyes moved across the paper, and a strange look crossed his face, half relief, half pain. It's a transfer alert, he said softly. Someone just sent me money. The cashier leaned closer to look at the message on his phone. The remaining amount had been paid into his account. A murmur spread across the store. So he really wasn't lying, one customer whispered. Amara let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. The stranger turned to her with gratitude shining in his eyes. You are willing to give your last money for someone you do not even know. That is something people do not forget. Amara gave a small smile. Just make sure you get home safely. The man nodded and paid for his groceries. Before leaving, he turned back. My name is Kofi Mensah. I will return this kindness. Then he was gone. For a moment, Amara stood there looking at the door through which he had disappeared. The people in the line began to talk again, but now their voices had changed. She has a good heart. May God bless her. Even the cashier smiled warmly at her. Yet, as Amara walked home that evening with her own much smaller bag of food, the weight in her heart remained. She still had almost nothing left. The next few weeks were harder than she had expected. At the tailoring shop, business slowed down. Fewer people came in to repair clothes or order new dresses. Many families in Ijoko were struggling, and clothing was not their first concern. Madame Ngozi, the owner of the shop, called Amara aside one afternoon. Business is poor, she said, her voice heavy. I may not be able to pay full wages this month. Amara lowered her eyes. I understand, ma.
That night, she sat outside her small room, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. Children played football nearby with a worn-out plastic ball, laughing loudly each time someone missed a kick. Their joy felt so far away from the worry in her chest. Sade came to sit beside her. You look troubled, she said. Amara hesitated, then told her everything about the stranger at the supermarket. Sade stared at her in disbelief. You almost gave away your last money. Amara? Amara looked down at her hands. I could not just watch him suffer. Sade shook her head, though not harshly. You are too good for this world." For a while, they sat in silence. Then, Sade spoke more gently. "But maybe goodness returns. Sometimes it just takes time." Amara wanted to believe that. Still, days passed. Then weeks. There was no sign of Kofi. No message, no call, nothing. Soon, life became even more difficult. One evening, as Amara returned from work, she found her landlord waiting outside her room. He was an older man named Babatunde, known in the neighborhood for being strict but fair. "Amara," he said, clearing his throat, "your rent is overdue." Her stomach tightened. "Please, Babatunde, give me a little more time. I will pay." He sighed. "I have already given you extra time. End of this month, I must have the money." She nodded, though fear rose in her heart like a dark wave. That night, sleep would not come. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing her mother's words in her mind. "Kindness is a seed. It may sleep in the soil, but one day it will grow." Still, seeds took time, and rent could not wait. The next morning brought another blow. Madame Ngozi called all the workers together. Her face looked worn. "I am sorry," she said, "but I have to close the shop for now." Gasps filled the room. "For how long?" someone asked. "I do not know." Amara felt the floor might disappear beneath her feet. The tailoring shop was all she had. By the time she walked home, the bright Lagos sun no longer felt warm. Everything seemed too loud, too fast, too heavy. For the next few months, Amara did every small job she could find. She washed clothes for neighbors. She helped an elderly woman sell roasted corn by the roadside. She braided children's hair for school. Every naira she earned went toward food and rent. Some nights, she cried quietly after everyone had gone to sleep. Yet, she never allowed bitterness to grow in her heart. Even when life seemed unfair, she still greeted everyone with kindness. Then, one rainy afternoon, something happened that shook the entire street. A black SUV, polished until it gleamed like glass, drove slowly into their narrow road. Children stopped playing. Women at the roadside stalls turned to stare. Cars like that did not come to places like this. The vehicle stopped right in front of Amara's house. A driver stepped out first, holding a large umbrella. Then, the back door opened. A man in a crisp navy suit stepped out. Tall, confident, familiar. Amara, who had been sweeping outside her room, froze. Her broom slipped from her hands. It was Kofi, but this was not the tired stranger from the supermarket. This man looked powerful, respected, the kind of man people stood aside for. The whole neighborhood gathered quickly. Sade came running from across the street. "Amara, is that him?" Kofi smiled when he saw her. "I told you I would return." The crowd leaned in, whispering. Some recognized him at once. "That's Chief Mensah's son. The businessman from Accra? The one opening factories across West Africa?" Amara's eyes widened. She had helped a man she thought was simply stranded. But now it was clear he was far more than that. Kofi stepped closer. "I have spent months looking for you." The receipt from the supermarket only had the shop location. It took time to find the woman who was willing to give away her last money. Amara was speechless. Then, Kofi reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He held it out to her. "This is for you." Her hand trembled as she took it. Inside was a bank check. The amount written on it made her breath catch. It was enough to pay her rent for years, enough to start a business, enough to change everything. The entire street gasped. But before Amara could speak, Coffee said something that made the moment even more shocking. He said, "This is only the beginning." Then he looked at her with a serious expression. "There is something much bigger I need to ask of you." And the entire neighborhood fell silent. The street went so quiet that even the children stopped kicking their football. Amara stared at Kofi, the check still trembling in her hands. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. Kofi looked around at the faces gathered outside her small room, then back at her. "I need someone I can trust, someone with a good heart. 6 months ago, in that supermarket, you showed me something money cannot buy." The neighbors whispered among themselves. Sade stood beside Amara, her mouth slightly open. Kofi continued, his voice calm and clear. "I am opening a new food processing company here in Ejoko. We will buy fruits and vegetables from local farmers, package them, and send them to stores across Nigeria and even to the United States." The crowd murmured in surprise. That kind of business could change the whole town. "But this is not just about business," Kofi said. "I want it to help this community. Jobs, training, better opportunities." He paused and looked directly at Amara. "I want you to help me lead it." Amara blinked in disbelief. "Me?" "Yes," Kofi replied. "I want someone who understands struggle and still chooses kindness." For a moment, Amara could not speak. She thought of her small room. Her unpaid rent. The tailoring shop that had closed. The many nights she had gone to sleep hungry. And now this man was offering her a future she had never even dared to imagine. "But I have never done anything like that," she said honestly. Kofi smiled. "Skills can be taught, character cannot." Those words stayed in the air like a blessing. Sade gave Amara a small push and whispered, "Say yes before I say it for you." The crowd laughed softly. Amara looked down at the check again, then back at Kofi. Slowly, tears filled her eyes. "I accept," she said. At once, cheers rose from the neighbors. Babatunde, the landlord, stepped forward with a wide grin. "My daughter, I always knew your kindness would return to you." Amara smiled through her tears. For the first time in many months, hope felt real. The weeks that followed changed everything. Kofi rented a proper office building near the main road in Ijoko. It was modern, with glass doors, bright lights, and new computers. For Amara, stepping inside on her first day felt like entering another world. She wore a simple but elegant Ankara dress that Sade had helped her sew from leftover fabric. Kofi introduced her to the rest of the team. "This is Amara," he announced. "Treat her with the respect she deserves." Many of the staff nodded warmly, but not everyone seemed pleased. A woman named Mrs. Bisi, who had worked in Kofi's company for years, narrowed her eyes. She was sharply dressed, always carrying a tablet and speaking in quick, clipped sentences. "So, this is the woman from the supermarket," she said with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Amara felt something cold in the way the woman said it. Still, she ignored the feeling. Her work quickly became the heart of the new company. She visited local farmers in nearby villages. She listened to their concerns. She helped organize training for young people who needed jobs. Soon, dozens of families in Ejoko were earning steady incomes because of the factory. People in the town began to speak of Amara with admiration. She did not forget where she came from. "She is one of us." Even Madame Ngozi, whose tailoring shop had closed, was hired to make uniforms for the workers. Little by little, the whole community began to rise. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and gold, Kofi stood beside Amara outside the factory. "You have done more in 1 month than some people do in years," he said. Amara smiled. "I only wanted to help." Kofi looked at her thoughtfully. "That is exactly why you succeed." For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. There was something unspoken in the silence, something warm and gentle. But before either could say more, a loud voice broke the moment. Amara! It was Sade, running toward them. She was breathless. There's trouble at the warehouse. Amara's heart dropped. Without wasting a second, she and Coffee hurried there. When they arrived, a crowd had gathered outside the warehouse. Several boxes of packaged goods had been torn open and spilled across the floor. Workers stood in frightened clusters. One of them stepped forward. Someone broke in, he said, and some important documents are missing. Coffee's expression darkened. What documents? The lined ownership papers, the worker replied. A heavy silence fell.
Those papers were critical. Without them, the company's rights to the factory land could be challenged. Amara's mind raced. Who would do this? Before anyone could answer, Mrs. BC appeared at the warehouse entrance. Her face was calm, almost too calm. This is terrible, she said. Perhaps the company expanded too quickly. Something in her tone made Amara's stomach twist. Later that night, unable to sleep, Amara went through the office files herself. As she searched through folders and emails, she found something shocking. There had been repeated warnings from Mrs. BC against opening the factory in Ijoko. More than that, there were messages suggesting she had been secretly working with a rival company that wanted the land. Amara's hands shook. Could she be behind the break-in? The next morning, she took the evidence straight to Kofi. He read the messages in silence. Then his face hardened. I trusted her for years. Before they could decide what to do next, a black car pulled up outside the office. Two men in formal suits stepped out. One held a folder. The other spoke first. We are here on behalf of the rival company. They are claiming legal ownership of this property. Gasps filled the room. Kofi stood up slowly. That is impossible. The man opened the folder and placed a document on the desk. Amara leaned closer. Her blood ran cold. The signature at the bottom looked like Kofi's, but it was a forgery. Someone had planned this carefully. Someone close. As everyone stood frozen, Mrs. BC quietly picked up her handbag and began walking toward the exit. Amara turned sharply. Stop her! And just as the workers moved, Mrs. BC broke into a run, clutching something inside her bag that could either save the company or destroy everything Amara had fought for.